So, this new shera is god-awful, but not for the reasons you think. Let's talk about that. So I'm sure a lot of you guys understand that I'm not nearly old enough to actually have been growing up with the real shera. By the time I was growing up, the Xbox One was already a mainstream thing. I just didn't have the money to afford it. It actually took me a while to realize just how late I was born to everything. I was still playing with the Nintendo 64, but GameCube, Xbox Live, all of that was already out at the time. So that being said, I don't have any emotional connection to the original shera. Heck, I didn't even know shera was a thing. I thought it was a fan fiction type stuff to deal with He-Man. It's like some sort of gender bent version of it. So if you're expecting me to rage about the good old days, you're at the wrong place. I'm sorry, 30-year-old boomers, I can't relate. I've never played Doom and I've never played Quake. My favorite artist is XXXTentacion. But even I agree this new shera is kind of shit. It's really hard to actually find any actual episodes of this, as it seems to only be on Netflix. No one seems to have taken it and pirated it. But there are trailers and clips that have been put out on YouTube and official sources, which are the ones that I'm going to use to talk about it here. Obviously, with any new version, something that's this far apart, I believe the original shera was in the 80s and it's 2018. That's, well, almost like 40 years, so obviously they're going to change the characters. Now for some of them it's kind of weird, but also understandable. You see, shera isn't supposed to be some sort of 23-year-old woman who's reached the peak of her maturity. You could see it as her being Tumblrized, and maybe she is, but I just think it's kind of a stylistic choice. The show back then seems to be, well, largely hand-drawn, and the show now is comically flash drawn. Like, there are literally YouTube videos with better animation than this, and this has a huge ass budget compared to those. Now the animation isn't complete. There are some moments where it's like, hey, that's pretty good. And other moments where I just have to laugh at how stilted the facial animations are and how rigid everything feels. Look, I'm not asking for shera to be a double D blonde goddess, but I am asking her to look like she can emote. I mean, we're getting major Mass Effect Andromeda vibes from these faces a lot of the time. She looks dead inside. She looks deader than any YouTuber I've ever seen, and that's, wow. That's pretty far gone. There are some character changes like Glimmer, who doesn't really look like anything of the original character. I can't even tell if it's a boy or girl. Bo, I guess he was just named Bo. Yeah, he kind of got a major downgrade. And also he's black for some reason, which is fine with me. Again, I don't really care if a character is black, white, Hispanic, etc. But it does seem like there are an abundance of people of color in this, almost as if they're trying to win social justice points. And at that point, I feel like it's almost demeaning to people of color to actually just kind of shoehorn them in there. Almost everyone has a tint of color to them except for shera, which only makes her seem actually more out of place and more pasty than what she is. The only real character that I actually really enjoy their redesign would be Katra. And Katra is a total cutie in this new version. She seems to be very angsty, very emo-y, and I love it. I can totally feel the lesbian shipping vibes coming off of these two main characters between shera and Katra. Everyone else, I would 100% agree, is more Tumblrized. Curves are gone. No one's like this giant double T. But again, I think all the characters are supposed to be a lot more youthful than their counterparts. Their counterparts are all like 20s, 30s, etc. These guys are more teenagers. Also, Natosa is actually a really nice design. I kind of enjoy it. I dig it. The acting also seems pretty lackluster, I'm not gonna lie. They're going for the same comedy that you can find in shows like Adventure Time or Star vs. the Forces of Evil, where it's a lot of lighthearted banter, a lot of, whoa dude, it's hard to put into words, but if you guys just listen or watch that show, you'll pick up on the dialogue. If they were to change it, you would immediately notice. And that's kind of the dialogue that I feel like they're trying to imitate and emulate and they're falling just short of it. It's hard to figure out what exactly makes that work and what doesn't, but it certainly doesn't work here. It's not bad, it's just, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel natural. It feels inorganic, like they're really trying to capitalize on this new wave of animation and new wave of humor. And there's nothing wrong with trying to do that. I'm not saying it's bad for them to try to do what other shows do. I'm just saying that they failed at it, and I feel like they should have realized that they were missing something and went back to the drawing board. Again, I've only seen bits and pieces of it, but this is what they're showing to get people enticed into watching their show. So if this is their best foot forward, as I'm assuming they're doing to get me to go and buy a Netflix subscription to watch this show, then I'm going to assume that this is the best acting, the best animation that they could possibly put forward without spoiling main plots. And even then, some of it does. We could have a discussion of how this show is just Tumblr incarnate, how some characters are having their 2-inch waistlines removed for very more rotund and realistic figures, but I don't care. The character designs in some cases are actually a lot better. There's a lot more body types than generic Amazonian woman, and rotund characters aren't inherently by nature Tumblr. Look at characters like Mei from Overwatch. I know a lot of Mei waifu fanatics are gonna be upset, but Mei's chubby. She's a chubby bunny for sure, but people love her. There's different archetypes that people gravitate to, and so having different body shapes in your show is not a bad thing. It literally is appealing to more people. I honestly didn't get any SJW vibes from the clips that I've seen. There doesn't seem to be any forcing of a narrative of men are all evil. In fact, there's a giant cast of men in this. Other shows like MOP have yet to have males in a significant role that isn't like a villain. So if any show is infected by a Tumblr ideology, it would be that show. Not to mention the main voice actress, Tara Strong, routinely goes on crusades, well, men in general, and especially white straight men. All in all, I enjoy this show as a concept. I think there were parts here that were really well put together. It was just the execution and the budget wasn't there to actually do it justice. And that's the problem for a lot of shows. These people writing the show, these people designing the characters, they're not bad. It's just they do the best they can with the budget and the time constraints that they have. And sadly, there's just something missing here. It's hard to really put into words, like I said, the spark that you get from watching an Adventure Time episode or from watching Star vs. the Forces of Evil. There's just something there. The dialogue feels more realistic. The voice acting is more on par. The animation feels lively, but everything here feels stilted and lifeless. The voice acting is flat, almost really amateurish. The character designs are hit or miss, but that could probably just go back to the fact that this looks like it was animated in Flash for Newgrounds. This all in all looks like something that would be a pilot, a scratch episode, not something to air for broadcast. I think if they went back to the drawing board, they could actually have a huge success on their hands. But unfortunately, that's not how animation in the industry works. If this flops, well, it might be another 40 years before we see another attempt at it. And that's kind of the problem with the outrage culture that we have today. I know a lot of people are immediately going to rally against this simply because of the fact that, well, it's kind of feels like it's Tumblr incarnate. It kind of feels like Tumblr got a hold of a TV show and they're gonna immediately discount it and rally against it. And so it has no room to grow or change because it's going to immediately be canned. Netflix cans shows that are sometimes some of their most viewed. Daredevil, which was an amazingly well-reviewed show with tons of people watching it, was canceled. So I'm not immediately going to say, don't go watch this show, because that's retarded and dumb. And anyone that tells you that really is not a, I guess, champion of animation or this medium at all. I'd say give it a shot. Give them a chance to evolve, find their legs. And if it doesn't get better, well, obviously just drop it. But if you can find any semblance of enjoyment out of it, maybe just support it for a little bit to see where it goes. Voice your opinions and voice your criticism 100% to help steer the show in the direction that you want it to go, but don't outright discount the show before giving it a fair shake. As always, guys, it's been Faith and Moliminous. I love your faces, so I hope you at least like my video, and I will see you guys in the next one.